The children stopped playing when the man appeared at the corner. He stood watching them, still and silent, until he raised his hand and motioned. One of the girls whispered not to go, but Mary Mormon stood, smoothed her dress, and walked toward him. The others remained on the step, frozen, as the man took the child's hand and led her away. She did not look back. By nightfall, the entire neighborhood would be searching with lanterns, but they were already too late. Hello everyone. Before we start, make sure to like and subscribe to the channel and leave a comment with where you are from and what time you are watching. Your support helps us bring you more stories like this. Now, let us begin. It was Sunday, the 6th of September, 1868, in the city of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Autumn had not yet arrived, but the heat of summer had begun to fade, leaving the air warm and still over the crowded streets of the 19th ward. On Orne Street, a working-class district where houses stood close together and families knew one another by name, the Mormon household was preparing for church. Mrs. Maria Mormon, a widow of 2 years, lived at number 1246 with her 5 children. Her husband, a shoemaker, had died in 1866, leaving her to raise the family alone. The eldest children helped where they could. The youngest, Mary, was 6 years old. She had golden hair, bright eyes, and a gentle manner that endeared her to everyone she met. The neighbors called her Little Mary Mormon, not simply because she was the youngest of the family, but because the name carried with it a softness, an affection that reflected how the child moved through the world. On that Sunday morning, Mrs. Mohrman decided her daughter was too young for the long service. She told Mary to stay home with her older sisters. The child obeyed. By evening, she would be gone. What happened in the hours that followed would shake the city and remain unresolved for more than a year. After her mother left for church, Mary went outside to play. She sat on the front steps with a few neighborhood children, as she did most days. They chatted and amused themselves in the usual way. The street was quiet. Doors were closed. Families were at church or resting indoors. The children remained on the step, their voices soft in the stillness. Then a man appeared at the corner of the street. He did not walk past. He stood watching them. The children noticed him but did not move. He raised his hand and motioned for Mary to come over. One of the girls, Caroline Dinglaser, told her not to go. Mary did not answer. She stood, straightened her dress, and walked toward him. The others stayed on the step. They watched as the man took Mary's hand. They watched as he walked away with her, down the alley and out of sight. She did not look back. The girls did not call out. They sat in silence, unsure of what they had seen. When the church service ended, Mrs. Mohrman began walking home. She was met on the street by her 2 eldest daughters. They were running, their faces pale. She asked what was the matter. They told her that Mary had gone with a man. Mrs. Mohrman could hardly comprehend what she was hearing. Mary, her youngest child, was missing. By the time she reached Orne Street, the neighborhood was already in motion. Word had spread quickly. Neighbors had come out of their houses. In working-class districts like theirs, there was no cold detachment, no quiet isolation behind closed doors. When someone was in need, everyone helped. They began searching immediately. No alley was left unchecked, no empty lot overlooked. The police were contacted. Lieutenant Whitcraft arrived and coordinated the efforts. Officers walked the streets with lanterns as dusk settled over the city. They searched through the night. By morning, they had not found her. The search continued the next day without success. Mrs. Mohrman was nearly out of her mind with worry. The youngest of her children, gone in a moment, led away by a man no one recognized. Her imagination offered no comfort. The possibilities it conjured were far too dark. Officers were dispatched across the city and into the surrounding countryside. They questioned neighbors, shopkeepers, anyone who might have seen something. Witnesses were interviewed. Descriptions were recorded. The man was said to have worn dark clothes and a black cap pulled low over his eyes. One witness claimed to have heard him say to the child, "Do not cry, Mary. I shall give you 5 cents. I am your uncle." But no one knew who he was. No one had seen him before. By Tuesday morning, the 8th of September, there were still no answers. The investigation continued, methodical and thorough, but hope was fading. Mrs. Mohrman sat in her house on Orne Street, waiting. Her neighbours brought food. They sat with her. They said nothing because there was nothing to say. Early that morning, a milkmaid named Caroline Ledman was crossing a vacant lot in the 19th ward. She carried a heavy pail of milk, which she was delivering to homes in the area. The lot was strewn with rubbish and was used by residents for dumping waste. It was a lonely, neglected place. As she walked, she noticed what appeared to be a child's dress lying near the path. She turned back to look more closely. It was not a dress. A child was lying there. She approached and saw the body of a little girl. It was apparent that she was dead. Nearby stood an old barn, used as a carpenter's shop, though it was empty at such an early hour. The lot was otherwise deserted. Caroline ran to get help. Within minutes, several local people had gathered at the scene. The police arrived soon after and took control of the situation. They examined the body and noted that the girl's clothes and hair matched the description of the missing child, Mary Mormon. However, they also remembered that they had previously searched this area. The child must have been killed elsewhere, and her body only recently placed there. Officers carefully transported the deceased child to the mortuary, where Dr. Chapley conducted an examination. When the police informed Mrs. Mohrman of the discovery, a wave of sorrow swept over her. Neighbours gathered around, offering condolences, but the depth of her grief was so profound that no words could truly ease the pain she felt. As news of the discovery spread through the community, it sparked a wave of shock, outrage, and deep horror. The mayor offered a substantial reward for the capture of the perpetrator. This sum was soon increased by generous citizens who believed firmly in swift and decisive punishment. In the days that followed, the value of a good reputation became more apparent than ever. Anyone with a hint of suspicion attached to their name, especially those known for troubling behaviour around children, fell under intense public scrutiny. Dr. Chapley's examination was thorough and methodical. He noted that the child had died on the very day she disappeared, the 6th of September. The cause of death was determined to be strangulation. Bruises were found on her neck, wrists and arms, indicating a struggle. Her underclothes were stained with blood. The examination revealed that she had been violated before her death. The doctor's findings were recorded and sealed. The evidence was forwarded to the authorities. The funeral of Little Mary Mormon was held on the 10th of September at St. Boniface's Catholic Church. The entire neighbourhood came out to witness the solemn occasion. The church was crowded, every pew filled, and the aisles lined with mourners. It was a deeply sorrowful scene, with the grief of the child's death evident in the hushed stillness and tearful faces of those gathered. Mrs. Mohrman sat in the front pew, surrounded by her remaining children. She did not weep openly. She sat in silence, her hands folded in her lap, her face pale and drawn. The following day, an inquest began. After careful examination of the evidence, the jury concluded that the child had been abused, strangled, and killed by an individual or individuals whose identities remained unknown. The police continued their search for the perpetrator and followed every lead with determination. Several suspicious men were quickly arrested, which raised hopes of a breakthrough. Among them was John Hanlon, a 20-year-old barber who lived near the Mohrman residence. Witnesses reported that Mary was last seen walking through the alleyway near his yard. Although some regarded Mr. Hanlon as an odd character, and there had been previous accusations of him assaulting young girls, no direct evidence connected him with Mary's disappearance. After a thorough investigation, he, like the other suspects, was released without charge. As days passed without any progress, public frustration mounted. The police came under heavy criticism. Accusations of inefficiency, blundering, and ignorance were levelled against them, with many people believing the investigation had been mishandled from the start. With no name, no fresh leads, and no additional witnesses, the case grew cold. 1 year later, in October 1869, another incident revived suspicions. Two young ladies, Mrs. Ann Boaz and her 16-year-old sister, Clara Ritchie, were walking home when Clara noticed a man following them and behaving suspiciously. They were in a sparsely populated area when, without warning, the man struck Annie on the back of the head with a stone, causing her to stumble. She managed to run and started to scream murder, while the man gave chase to Clara. A passerby named Oliver Ottinger heard the cries and saw the chase. He ran after the man and apprehended him. The authorities were contacted, and the man was taken to the alderman. He identified himself as Charles Hanlon. Although he had been arrested, he was not formally charged. Instead, after paying compensation to the young ladies, he was released, and the case was settled. Just a month later, a man attempted to assault a 10-year-old girl who was playing outside the Tabernacle Methodist Church. The man lured her behind the building, but her screams attracted the attention of a blacksmith, who quickly intervened, subdued the attacker, and handed him over to the police. The man gave his name as Charles F. Harris and was taken into custody, later tried, convicted, and sentenced to 5 years in Mohrman prison. However, Charles F. Harris was soon identified to be none other than Charles Hanlon, the man who had attacked Mrs. Boaz and Mrs. Ritchie just a month earlier. His attempt to hide behind a false name had failed. It was then discovered that this man had constantly used aliases when dealing with the police. When the authorities investigated him further, they discovered that his real name was John Hanlon, the man they had arrested a year earlier on suspicion of the murder of Mary Mormon. If you are finding this case as compelling as we are, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to our channel. It truly helps us continue researching and sharing these forgotten stories from history. We also read every comment, so let us know your thoughts on this case below. Now, let us continue. While in prison, Mr. Hanlon shared a cell with a man named Michael Dunn, a petty thief who was serving a sentence for larceny. Mr. Dunn, however, was no ordinary criminal. He had a long history, including multiple convictions in England, which eventually led to his transportation to Australia. After completing his sentence there, he made his way to America, where he resumed his criminal activities. After a few days in the cell together, Mr. Dunn approached officers with a disturbing statement. He claimed that Mr. Hanlon had spoken to him in detail about the murder of Mary Mormon. According to Mr. Dunn, Mr. Hanlon had described the girl as being around 9 years old, and had told him that he strangled her in the basement of his house on Sunday the 6th of September, then calmly watched as neighbours searched the area for her. He went on to say that Mr. Hanlon had also said that in the early hours of Tuesday the 8th of September, he had carried the girl's body to a vacant lot and left her there. With this chilling new information, the police formally charged John Hanlon with murder. The trial opened on the 31st of October 1870 and drew a packed courtroom filled with people eager to hear the details of the tragic case. News of the murder had spread widely, and the public's interest was intense. Every seat was taken as spectators, some seeking justice, others simply curious, gathered to listen closely to the evidence and testimony presented throughout the proceedings. John Hanlon, accused of murdering Mary Mormon, appeared calm and attentive as the trial began. One of the prosecution's key witnesses was Michael Dunn, the convicted thief, who had been pardoned in exchange for his testimony. He told the court that he did not know John Hanlon before he shared his cell, and only learned about Mary Mormon's murder from Mr. Hanlon himself. He described in detail what Mr. Hanlon had allegedly confessed to him, including how he had disguised himself, lured young Mary away, and killed her in the outdoor toilet behind his home, before pushing her body through the cellar window. The defense quickly dismissed Michael Dunn's testimony, attacking his credibility and pointing out that his claims were uncorroborated. They branded him an unreliable career criminal, motivated by the promise of a pardon. They urged the jury not to condemn a man based solely on the word of such a witness. They reminded the jury that Caroline Dinglaser, who was with Mary on the day she disappeared and knew Mr. Hanlon, had said that she did not recognize the man who took Mary. The jury deliberated for over a day, carefully considering the evidence and conflicting testimony. When they returned to the courtroom with a verdict, they found the defendant, John Hanlon, guilty. John Hanlon's lawyer requested a new trial, but the court denied it. On the 11th of December 1870, John Hanlon returned to court for sentencing. The judge asked him if he had anything to say. John stood up and, holding the Bible, he condemned the witnesses who had testified against him. He said that they had not told the truth and had been paid by the detectives, Smith and Taggart. Looking at the judge, he urged that future juries remember his final words and not let perjury lead to more wrongful convictions and wrongful deaths. He then kissed the Bible. Following this, the judge sentenced him to hang. His execution, however, was postponed until the 1st of February 1871. 2 weeks before his execution date, he sent for Detective Smith to apologize to him and Detective Taggart for his earlier outburst in court. He still did not confess to the crime, but showed some signs of remorse. He wore rough clothes against his skin, gave up tobacco, slept on the cold prison floor, and lived on just bread and water. 2 priests visited him regularly and guided him spiritually. Only officials, his lawyer, and a few members of the press were permitted to attend the execution. On the scaffold, John Hanlon forgave those who had wronged him and asked for forgiveness in return. His final words were recorded by those present. "Jesus, have mercy upon me. Holy Mary, pray for me. Saint Joseph, intercede." John Hanlon was then hanged. Death was immediate. The newspapers covered the execution in brief, matter-of-fact terms. The reward money was distributed. The case was closed. Mrs. Mohrman returned to her house on Orne Street and lived quietly with her remaining children. The neighbors stopped speaking of it. Life continued. Years later, the name Mary Mormon was spoken only in brief, if at all. The case file remained in the records of the city, bound and sealed. The lot where her body was found was eventually built upon. The house on Orne Street changed hands. The street itself was renamed. The church where her funeral was held still stands, though few who pass it now remember what occurred there in September of 1868. There are those who say that justice was done. There are others who say that an innocent man was hanged on the word of a convicted thief seeking his freedom. The truth, like so many things from that time, has faded into silence. The file remains in the record, bound in dust and forgotten. Behind the windows of Philadelphia, kettles boiled and doors closed. Beyond that, only silence.